I had a nice relationship with him. I mean, he's a decent person. He's also politically, I think, pretty conservative, although unfortunately, I don't think he has the courage of his convictions. But, I mean, I've made an appointment to talk to him, and I'm going to say, Malcolm, you are the executive director of the Conference of blah, blah, blah. I want you to say something. I want you to stand up and say something, because this is bearing false witness, and this has no place in our community. And, I mean, what's really kind of hairy about this is, this happens, 10 days go by, and now we have the Department of Homeland Security using the Southern Poverty Law Center, again, to start identifying conservatives, by belief, by the way, that's what it boils down to, as potential terrorists. I mean, I see this, what's going on in Homeland Security, as a tremendous threat to liberty in this country. And by the way, don't hold your breath waiting for any Jewish organization to speak out against it, because they have lost any sense of right or wrong. It's just whatever is politically correct. Now, if some left-wing organization's ox were gored, they'd all be bellowing and screaming. But they're not going to go to bat for people over federalism or Second Amendment rights or immigration or people who are opponents of abortion. And by the way, the notion about single-issue people is such horseshit. It's one thing that people may have a particularly strong set of convictions about an issue, but, I'm interested in lots of issues, and I know people who are Second Amendment people are interested in lots of issues, and I don't know anyone who only spends his or her time every day thinking about abortion. And essentially what's happened here is that the entire conservative side of the cultural divide has been essentially demonized, leaving aside the unbelievable, atrocious insult to veterans coming back. But, I mean, the whole conservative side is being described as potential extremist terrorists, where suddenly, you can't find euphemisms soft enough to describe Islamic terrorism. What does it become now? Man-made disaster? Or, I don't know. There's some kind of crazy man-made disaster. I agree that Islam is a man-made disaster, but it's absolutely incredible. I mean, they can't come up with euphemisms preposterous enough to describe the real danger, but these chimerical dangers that really are all about politics. I mean, and also I think it's very interesting this is happening right about the time that Obama said he's going to bring back comprehensive immigration reform. And it's all about stigmatizing opponents as bigots, racists, and potential terrorists. This is really dangerous stuff. And I really believe that what's happened with CIS and the SPLC and HIAS is we were the miner's canary. I mean, that was, I'm not suggesting that was, a test run, but it's what's happening with the DHS is this story writ large, and obviously in a much more dangerous way. I mean, I've had people in touch with me saying, purge your emails, watch what you email people. So I made a point, my sister sent me an email and said, Steve, we really think you should be careful, and so I sent her back an email. I said, sis, yeah, of course, don't worry about it, really be careful. And then at the bottom in gigantic Gothic letters wrote Heil Hitler, and I've been sending every email to myself, when I'm sending something from a newspaper, to Osama bin Laden from Adolf Hitler. I mean, I really just feel like pushing a goddamn button. I mean, I'm at the point where I'm thinking, one day it's not completely impossible that a group of FBI agents is going to walk to 1522 K Street and want to go through our files. I mean, this is how this shit begins. And you'd think that of all people in the world, Jews would understand that that's one of the reasons, by the way, that, I think it's extremely important, for example, vis-a-vis immigration, that when I talk about the fact that this is a wholesale violation of the rule of law, that Jews ought to understand that societies that become lawless are not good places for Jews. That we got a long history that ought to teach us that. when civil society starts crumbling and anarchy starts resulting, that we're going to end up being on the receiving end at one point or another. And you know, I'm terribly worried about what's going to happen to the rule of law here. And when I see Napolitano actually defending this outrageous memorandum, which, by the way, today I was looking at the Washington Times. By the way, I'm hoping to get a hold of Eli Lake. I've got to call into him. He's the guy who's running this thing. I'm hoping he'll follow up, maybe do something on us. That apparently the attorneys in DHS said, you're clearly overstepping into civil liberties and personal belief. You're getting into areas that are constitutionally impermissible. She defends the memorandum. I mean, this is a I think it's a defining moment. It's going to be very interesting to see where things go from here. I mean, I say interesting only in the Chinese sense. I mean, I'm worried. I worry about anything that looks like a curtailment of liberty. And I there was a time when I was younger and maybe more idealistic, or maybe Jewish organizations had more integrity. When something like this would happen, you could expect that some Jewish organization would stand up and say, "No, this is wrong. This is how fascism started. This is how National Socialism started." But they're not going to say a word because they have no sympathy for it. I mean, it's all about their agendas now. It's all about the issues they're pushing and who they're in bed with. And unfortunately, they're really not dealing with issues of right or wrong. And if that sounds simplistic, I can't help it. I really do think this is an issue of right and wrong, and I think instead they're looking at it merely politically. And that shows an incredible want of moral vision and an incredible absence of leadership. And that's what we don't have anymore in the Jewish community. We are a leaderless community. Our leaders they don't represent us. They don't protect us. They don't protect our interests. They are self-perpetuating. I mean, these are oligarchic plutocracies that represent nothing and no one and are simply basically pushing political correctness and carrying the balls for other people. And, when I go and speak to communities and they say, what can we do? Well, first of all, I tell them what they ought to do in terms of contacting their members of Congress and, what they should be telling them about immigration legislation. But I said, if you belong to a Jewish organization, quit. Walk away. Don't support them unless you're going to stay in and fight to change it. If you're a Republican or a Democrat, quit. Become an independent, because neither party deserves your support. But I name the Jewish organizations. I mean, what's fascinating, by the way, is that the vast majority of Jews, and this is something that will come, I suppose, as a surprise to some of these people. I mean, the whole Jewish universe, and I lived in it for a pretty long time. I mean, I worked. Well, the Holocaust Museum was not the same, and obviously that was a federal institution. But I mean, I worked at AJC for nearly 8 years. I mean, these people are so self-important and so delusional and so cut off from ordinary life. They don't understand that nobody out there knows anything that they do. They don't. I mean, no one knows what their agendas are. That includes, by the way, most of their members. The only real danger is that through smoke and mirrors and God knows how else, there are a lot of people on Capitol Hill who actually believe that the American Jewish Committee or whoever the hell else it is actually speaks for American Jews. And for me, one of the great projects of those of us who refuse to buy that is to break that. Is to destroy that illusion. And that's, I mean, the background that I've written basically breaks down. I look at the secular Jewish organizations, I look at Reform and Conservative Judaism and Reconstructionism, how many people there are, how many they claim, how many people are really there, and, how many you could define basically as liberal or politically correct. I come up with 16% of affiliated American Jewry. That's it. 16%. That's in whose name they're speaking. I mean, it's what we're looking at is what the founding fathers and the Federalist Papers called usurpation.